Hey everybody.
Hey there.
Today we are going to be talking about why beating yourself up will never help you to rise.
That sort of beating yourself up. Come on.
So have you ever been in a situation, I'm sure we all have, I definitely have, been in this space where you're trying to get something to happen and you sort of start to kind of beat yourself up by kind of going, oh, can't get this right. Why is everybody else outside of me being able to do this? Am I the only one that's not kind of getting this? Like, why can't I just get my shit together? Whatever that voice is that you kind of say to yourself, like, we all have that little voice that kicks in those moments. And then on the flip side of that, we start to use that as a motivation, if you like, to start to do the thing that we really think we want to be doing. So we kind of beat ourselves up by going, I'm really shit at this. And then the other little voice kind of kicks in. It's like, no, you can do this. Like you just got to take the next step. Like you can do this. And then you start to use that pressure, if you like, that this pressure that we put on ourselves. We use that thinking that will motivate us, that will inspire us to make the next step. And sometimes it looks like that. But what we want to talk about today is that that's never actually where the true power lies. Like it's still playing that illusion of the ego game, if you like, that using that beating yourself up is going to get you somewhere. Like it's very temporary and it's not tapping into the full power that's available to you, which only love can do that self-love that we have for ourselves.
Yeah. And I think this shows up in different ways too. For me, it's not so much beating myself up, it's being really hard on myself. So it's sort of like putting this almost unnecessary pressure on myself to, hey.
Almost like punishing yourself.
Yeah, it does feel a bit punishing, actually. There is an element of that, now you say it. Yeah, there is. Yeah, it's very unconscious. Like I'm not trying to punish myself, but I'm definitely going really hard on myself to like push through things, push through my to-do list, or just get this done, or make this perfect, or don't put this out until it's really done. But it's in the work productivity aspect, I think, for me. That's how it shows up. And Jodie always says how extreme I am, sort of thing. Like if I'm going to do a fast, I'll do the longest fast possible type thing. Or if I'm going to do exercise, I'll do it for 3 hours on the first day type thing, rather than easing into
all or nothing.
Yeah, it's that real extreme all or nothing stuff, and it doesn't come. It comes from being really hard on myself, if I'm really honest. Like that's how it appears. To this real extreme living at times, and I've really had to become aware of it and temper myself because I just can't sustain it. Obviously, it's ridiculous. Nor is it the right, not there's a right and wrong way of doing it, but that's not the most efficient way of doing stuff either. And I think over the years I've started to realize that the more harsh I was on myself, and that it wasn't actually making me step up and rise. In fact, if anything, it was exhausting me and demotivating me. I certainly was no inspiration coming through, and that I guess that's the difference between motivation and inspiration. Is the motivation has to come from the outside world, which I was trying to do. There was definitely no inspiration going on because I wasn't tapped into anything other than my head, and so I had to then find motivation in the outside world to get me to do stuff. If I just get through my to-do list, then I can watch Netflix this afternoon or tonight. If I just do this, then I can go and have a bath and relax. Like it's sort of this stuff, like it's crazy.
Yeah, and that's what I think. It almost feels like a punishment, as you said. It's an unconscious thing because but I use the word punishment for that reason, because it's almost like withholding things from yourself until you get to a place. So there's always this spot you've got to do, a certain number of things you've got to tick off your to-do list before you feel like you've done enough, that you're good enough, that you've achieved enough, that you've pleased enough people, that you've satisfied whatever it is that's going on in your head before you get to that level of success, whatever that is for you. But it does fall under that idea of punishing yourself, that you have to kind of have a punishment reward type system going on to actually get what you want in life, kind of thing, rather than just tapping into this space of what you hear a lot around is you need to love yourself first before you can love somebody else fully. This idea that you need to talk to yourself with kind words, so that inner dialogue that we have with ourselves, like it's like what you would say when you're talking to your best friend. Like, you wouldn't talk to your best friend like we talk to ourselves. So it's that whole idea that why do we do that with ourselves then? It's this sense of separation still, that we don't actually have the power, that, I don't know, maybe on some level we don't believe that we can make that much effect on our lives, that it is kind of outside of ourselves, that we don't believe it's possible even sometimes that we could shift. Or, you know, we see an outside success and we think, oh, I couldn't have that, I can't do that, like, and that's when that voice sort of starts to kick in about beating yourself up about not being good enough to do that thing, perhaps. But then this idea that everything is neutral in the universe, so there is a positive and negative aspect of everything. So there has to be that thing that balances it out. So it's like the two voices in your head sort of thing. So there'll be the one that's beating yourself up, and then there's the other one that counteracts that. That's like, no, you can do this. Like, pull yourself up. So that's the motivation space that Nat's sort of talking about. That idea that the voice kind of kicks in to, or you kind of go, oh, I'll let myself watch Netflix if I get to this, if I do this task. So there is that little voice that kind of kicks in to sort of motivate us to get through the thing, whatever that thing is that we're trying to achieve. But it's still never going to be as good as, or not as good as in terms of a judgment space, but as powerful as, or as effective as Nat was saying, as coming from that space of love, because that is the true power of who we are. Whereas the positive and negative coming back into a neutral space, which is what it's always trying to do. The negative voice pushes us down. The positive voice is going to pull us back up, trying to always get us to that neutral space. And in that neutral space is where love sits. If we went straight to that neutral space of talking to ourselves in, like we would talk to our best friend or our partner, that space of love, then that is where the true rising will come from. So this idea we spoke about, the title today, about how beating yourself up will never make you rise or never help you rise. It's not that you won't ever make inroads, you know, into your things that you're trying to do, or that you won't feel like you're getting ahead with certain things. But if you were to just tap straight into that space of knowing you're infinite, knowing that you're love already, speaking to yourself in that place, then you have access to the infinite potential in that moment, rather than coming from a really limited space of making yourself do something, pushing yourself to do something. And it does feel like that. It feels like effort. It feels like it takes up a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of internal, like,
convincing.
Yeah.
It's like you're trying to manipulate yourself constantly.
Yeah. Well, you are, in effect, aren't you? Like, what you are doing is you're talking into something. Like, it's kind of like you're having this little negotiation with yourself, going on. Oh, if I do this, then I'll be able to do that thing, or then it will mean this, or then that person will like me, whatever that voice is that goes on inside your head. It is a convincing game. It is. Yeah.
It did make me realize, actually, just as you were talking before, it's like, holy shit, I've never really seen this before. So we have like the beating up, which everyone seems to do. And then we have the balancing self-love movement. And it's sort of like, I never really realized, because it's sort of bugged me a little bit when people talk about self-love all the time. And it's sort of like, why do you purposely need to go out and find self-love? Like, love is actually who you are. So there's no looking for it or going to get it or doing something. You can't do love.
Yeah.
You just can be love. So, but I can see now why the self-love movement has come into play and why it's been necessary, because it is the balancing of the beating up. So the beating up, and then we have to have the corresponding self-love movement, and trying to chase that as well to balance this out. When in actual fact, as you're saying, if you actually just realize that you already are love, and you'll never escape that, because that's who you are, and no one will ever escape that. Love is all there is. Everything of the energy is love. So when you just sort of go, I'll stop playing this game, and it is a choice. I think I'll stop playing this game now, this beating up and self-love thing, because it's just going up and down, up and down, up and down the whole time, and you go around in circles. To just going, what if I just said that I was love already? And I do everything from a space of wanting to do certain things. I feel inspired to do certain things. I feel moved in my heart and spirit to do certain things. And you follow that path, and you take inspired action. It doesn't mean that you don't do anything. It means you take inspired action when it comes to you to do stuff. If you did that, you would feel 100% fulfilled because you're following what's true for you in every moment, then it is a lot more relaxing. Like, you don't have this exhaustion that we've got in this game, this up and down thing that we do, backwards and forwards, feet in both worlds type thing. It's just so literally exhausting.
Yeah.
And time consuming, and all the stuff that we're trying to get from it, from manipulating ourselves to actually, you know, if I just do this, I'll get that. Like this, like you're saying, this punish and reward and cause and effect and all this sort of stuff, when in actual fact, this is another option. And the very thing that we're trying to get from this world is actually the very thing that's just sitting here the whole time, just waiting for us to recognize. If we just stepped into this world instead, that we'd have everything that we're looking for.
That's the thing I was getting, what you're saying is that when we are beating ourselves up, and that whole push-pull thing that kind of goes on, and the inner motivation, we're trying to rise all the time, it's still definitely always coming from that separation space, because we're looking outside of ourselves and comparing ourselves to something, whether that's a person or it's a standard that we see in our industry, perhaps that we work in, or it's I don't know, something we see on TV, like who knows, like whatever this idea that we have in our head that we're trying to match up to in that moment, that's what we're beating ourselves up when we start listening to that voice. And you start to kind of go, who am I comparing myself to, or what am I comparing myself to? It's always, there's something that you're trying to get to. So it's always outside of you. That power is always outside of you. Whereas when you switching it back to I'm already love, and you start speaking to yourself from that place of what you already are, like what Nat's saying, it's a whole different world. Like it's stepping into the infinite world, and the power is you. You're not looking outside of you anymore. So you're purposely looking inwards then. So it has to shift, because that's where the true power actually lies. It's never outside of you. It's why it always feels so shitty. Like it feels horrible when you're doing it, because it's not actually the truth. So our feelings and like our emotions that come up are actually the real guidance to us in that moment. So if it doesn't feel good to you, then it's not the truth. But the truth always feels expansive. Even it might be hard to hear sometimes, but it always feels expansive. Whereas beating yourself up never feels expansive. When you tap into it, it never feels good.
It shuts you down, like every time. Of course it shuts you down. Like
So it's just trying to show you that you're putting your power in the wrong thing. It's not the truth. The truth is that you always have the power. Even if it doesn't look like that, you always have the power. That's the key, I suppose, is starting to believe that you do have the power. And it is a choice, as Nat said, to actually show up differently and make a different choice. And it might feel really silly in the beginning. It probably will feel really silly, because you're so used to not talking to yourself in a nice way. And it kind of feels a bit self-gratuitous or something, like, oh, I'm love, I'm all these things, and it feels a bit stupid. But it's like, well, imagine you were talking to your best friend. Like, it doesn't feel silly, does it? Like, it feels like you're just you're being a loving person, and you really want to help that person because it's coming from a genuine space. So how about we shift that around and we turn it back on ourselves? And that's where the true power is.
And it doesn't have to be gushing. It can just be encouraging. Like, that's how it started for me. I was just encouraged, like, and then when I started encouraging myself, I was like, oh, wow, this actually feels really nice. like, wow, okay. I don't know. Just sort of, it feels like if I tap into it again now, it just feels like this opening of this encouragement is an opening, an invitation to step into type thing. I was like, oh, that actually feels really good. Like, okay, I can do that. Like, encouragement doesn't seem, over the top. So
that's true too. I think you start going down that line, then that's where the inspiration starts to kick in too. So it shifts from motivation, which is always an eternal doing something to make something else happen on the outside. It's not coming from an inspired space, whereas inspiration just comes through you. Like, it comes to, I'm sure we've all had moments of inspiration. We know what that is like, that idea that something just pops into your mind and you feel a certain move to do something, like it's an internal knowingness about something, and you follow that feeling. Whereas motivation is like you're trying to make it happen, like you're trying to talk yourself into doing something on some level. And sometimes you can use outside stuff for motivation as well, but it's never coming from that inner love space. And that's the difference. When you can always tell the difference.
All right, 2 announcements. We have 2 Ask Us Anything sessions. So these will be live sessions on Facebook, in our Facebook group. And that will be in Eastern time, Saturday at 8 p.m. and again on Monday at 2 p.m. We'll put the links to it in the chat or in the description, not sure where. And yeah, come along and participate in that, so you can ask us whatever you like. If there's any burning questions about relationships or money or health, or how could you look at things differently in the world, you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, can't quite get something pinpointed, you're not feeling connected to the infinite, you sort of tend to be dropping in and out of it or sort of playing in two worlds. They're all the questions we want to answer. So do come and ask us. It's a really good opportunity to have a chat and a bit of a mull over everything. Might be wine time even. Let's have a wine and have a chat.
Yeah. We'll put the links in that below in the comments, and there is a couple of events posted in the Facebook group which has all the details on it. So if it's not showing up in the news feed, you can click on that in the navigation bar where it says events, and that will bring up the 2 events that are happening, and that has all the time zones too, because we're trying to pick times, 2 different times, so that it will cover pretty much the whole world mostly. So if you can't make it to both of them, try and make it to one of them, and the replays will be here in the group. But definitely show up live if you can, make use of the time and ask your questions.
For sure. So that's a prelude to what is now open as for founding members, which is the Infinite Living 12-month coaching program. We've been dying to put this out for ages. All we want to do is coaching. That's sort of crazy. So we just, on the spur of the moment, the other day went, okay, let's open it for founding members. So it's open right now. It is, at this stage, $697 US, which is going to be pretty much a fraction of what we're going to be charging eventually for 12 months worth of coaching and a whole bunch of bonuses. We've got 6 different bonuses that are also in there. So I haven't got the link. We'll put the link in the description for the order page. If you want to come across, you can read a little bit more about it. We did a live specifically on what's included, and you can see on the page everything that you're going to get in the package if you're interested. It will be 12 months. We're going to be doing lives 3 to 4 times a week in a private Facebook group and also on Zoom. So you'll be actually able to directly ask us questions, and we'll do hot seats and all sorts of things. We've got tons of stuff planned for our coaching stuff. So this is, if you really want to step up into living infinitely, which means living expansively on all levels, in all areas of life, in your finances, in your health, in your relationships, in your creativity. Oh, Mandy's got the thing there. That up. Oh, sorry, I just took it off. Then this coaching program is going to be specifically aimed at that. This is going to be really expanding your mind and what you think is possible. And we're going to get you totally out of your head and totally out of your mind into the infinite space where anything is actually possible. And
then breaking it down to be really practical every day. How do I live this? What does this look like for money, relationships, health, creativity? I want it to be very practical, hands-on help.
Absolutely. So you can find that at theinfinite.me/living it now. There you go.
Dashes between the words.
With the dashes. Very cool. All right, that's it from us, and we'll catch you again tomorrow or the next day, sometime soon. And if not, come on over to our sessions and join the fun.
Yep.
Very cool. All right. Bye.
Bye.